Hello, students. This is a short PowerPoint lecture on the Part 1 materials of music. Remember Plato? He said, musical training is a more potent instrument than any other because rhythm and harmony find their way into the secret places of the soul. 428 to 340 BCE. Do you think he listened to music? Of course he did. So the learning objectives, by the end of Part 1, you will be able to, I always laugh at this. Yeah, sure. And there are chapters regarding each one of these, perhaps. So we're going to listen to melodies here in this Part 1, or discuss types of melodies, right? How they move in time. The special thing about music is it has to involve time. A painting is something that's static and you can look at it, or a picture and it doesn't change. But music requires the passage of time to take place. It's not instantaneous. So another one objectives, you're going to grasp some of the basic precepts of Western harmony, and here harmony adds depth to music. So this is about Western music, and it's not about non-Western music, and we'll find out what that is. Another objective, perceive how different lines, musical lines, can interact to form varied musical textures. We're going to try to learn how to recognize simple shapes or forms in a piece that are created because of repetition and contrasting ideas. You can basically either repeat an idea, modify the idea, or have a new idea. That's all you can do in art. We're going to discuss how changing tempo and dynamics, we use the word dynamics regarding loudness and softness in music. We're going to try to learn how to distinguish sounds, right? Timbre of each instrument or voice, and learn how voices and instruments are combined in various music ensembles. We're going to try to understand how musicians combine these elements in different ways to make one musical work sound different from another. We're going to consider the concept of canon in musical repertoires, how it has developed through time, as well as your potential role in the future evolution. Canon. I'm not sure how they're talking about that right now. Develop confidence in writing about music as you are introduced to new repertoires of music. You can say, I don't know much about music. How can I write about music? And I always say that there's just three things. It's like, what did you see? What did they do? And how did you like it? So real quickly to go through these different style periods, because the nuts and bolts of music, Part 1, really does not involve these different style periods, but nevertheless, this is what the gist of the course is, right? And we're going to start with the Middle Ages. Why do we start with the Middle Ages? Well, because that's when we first have written down music, and we talk about recording music, and we always think about as something that you listen to that's a recording has been made. But recording music really means writing it down, because I think there's always been music with humanity. Ever since there's been any humanity, there's been music. You know, if we had a voice, we learned how to use it. And before we even had words, perhaps we were singing. So this is 400 to 1450. And that's a long period of time. The Renaissance is just 150 years. And 1450 is when the invention of the printing press, and just before that, Martin Luther and other things that had a huge impact, and the Black Plague on the ending of the Middle Ages, the beginning of the Renaissance, because Renaissance means rebirth. And during the Renaissance, there was a questioning of religion and the purpose of us being on earth. And so 1600 is the end of the Renaissance and the beginning of the Baroque period. And 1600 is the invention of opera in 1600. And so most of these days surround some event. And then 1750 is the death of Bach. He lived from 1685 to 1750. And I really should say J.S. Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach, because he had a number of children that were also professional musicians and were, you know, better known than he was at the time he and his children were living. And so the 1750, the death of Bach, and the beginning of the classical, and these things are not, you know, cut and dry. I said, okay, on January 1st, we're going to start this new style. That's not the way it works, just like in style periods today. How do they happen? Where do they come from? And when did it happen? It's not, these things are not real clear. And so here is a picture of Beethoven. And he himself, he was born into the classical period, and in his early career was writing classical music. But by the time he was in midlife, he was already writing romantic music. And he died in 1827. So I don't know why they just don't use 1827 as the marker for the end of the classical period in music, because that's the death of Beethoven, an important marker. And here that, you know, we said that the classical period at 1825 ended, and here they're saying the romantic period started in 1820. So again, it's not, these are the dates we use, but in reality, things don't change all at the same time. There's a kind of a gradual, relatively quick, but it takes, you know, maybe 5-10 years for things to change. Sometimes they don't change. And then a 1900, the end. And well, things were already changing before 1900, and then romantic period goes on, and still people, and to this day, write music where you would say, oh, that's romantic music. And when you use the word romantic, it's not about romance as much it is about the root being Roman. And it's more like about adventure and the soul, and finding reasons for existence, and those kinds of things, paying attention to different parts of society. And that's what the romantic period is about: poetry, nature, adventure, macabre. And then the 20th century, we used the 1900 to present, and we really break this into two parts, up to World War II, around 1940, so 1900 to 1940, 45, and then World War II, 1940 and 1945 to present is how we break up the 20th century. And so that's the end of that lecture on what we're going to cover in part 1, the materials of music.